Hey, what's up, guys? This is Justin from Justice League Swag, and today I'm going to be doing a deck profile on my Requiem deck, Black Dragons. Shout outs to Jake Schallenberger for creating this flag of me, and then my friend Jonathan Minham actually bought it and sent it to me. So, starting off, my buddy is Purple Rag of Ruin Abigail. This card is amazing because on enter you gain 2 life. So the life gain in this deck helps you avoid running too many shields in the deck. So you can ramp up on life and then not have to worry about the cost of paying some of your skills that may cost life, like casting Requiem. And then also, it can be overwhelming to your opponent to like be looking at you with like 18 life, and they cannot possibly kill you on one turn. So this is the buddy because if you have a set on the field at the end of turn, if this card is still on the board, if you have a set on the field, he pops a card on the field. Yes, a card. So this means you can destroy an item, a set spell, or a monster. What I usually do at the end of my turn, you want to attrition your opponent as much as possible, is I only pop items if they don't have Soul Guard, and then I'll pop set spells that will actually like give my opponent advantage or some kind of perks and stuff. Otherwise, monsters. So usually you want to take out their set spells or items with this guy at the end of the turn. So I'm going to start with the impacts. Just 3 death count Requiem. It is the win condition of the deck, but I only run it at 3 because if you draw it later on in the game, you don't need extra copies of it, and it can actually get you killed because it's a dead draw once you have one set. And the deck is a lot faster now because of the Overturn ability to basically skip one of your opponent's turns. So just at 3, and I'm running 4 the Searcher, but I'll get to that later. Size zeros. I'm running 3 Sailed Black Crust Dragon Elgod. Elgod is amazing in this format because it's like one of our main counters to bats. Like, so we have one counter with set spell invitation, and then we have this guy. Ideally, if I'm playing against the open center deck, I will always call this guy to the right or left. If my opponent has already called a monster, I'll call this in front of their bats. So if they have a monster on board already and it's not menacing, I will not call this card in front of it. I'll call it to the other side because then that forces them to get rid of the less menacing monster and basically -1 in order to play something useful in that column. And then the next turn I'll just play another one in front of the bats or whatever. For the mirror match, this card is super handy if you go first against closed center decks. You can completely shut down a deck just by calling this to the center, because then this forces them to call all of their primary monsters that they would usually use to tank to the sides, unless their monster has some kind of ability where their abilities can't be negated, or if you're playing a Thor and you actually get off the crystal cleats that says that your monster in the center's abilities can't be negated. So if you go first and you can against a closed center deck, call this guy to the center. It will completely screw him. Even in the mirror match, your opponent can't overturn Abigail unless they call Abigail to the side, which is not optimum at all playing against this deck. So you can really force your opponent to do some silly stuff just by placement. Placement is everything with this card, where you do it and when you do it. It's a very hard deck to play, but you could get there with a lot of practice. Next up for size zeros, I am running 3 Arrowbow SD. This card is really good because at the end of your opponent's turn, if he is still on the field, well, a black dragon is on your field, but he still has to be there. You get to gauge 2 and gain 2 life. So this could mitigate any damage that you may have taken this turn. And it also has Soul Guard. So this means your opponent really has to focus on getting rid of this if they don't want you to gain that 2 life and 2 gauge. I only call this guy to the center if I absolutely have to, if there's nothing else in my hand. And then he's only at 3 just because he's a gauge. So I don't want to pay too much gauge outside of keeping alive. And this activates at the end of your opponent's turn. So it's not that useful at 4, because then you would have to like have everything survive and it's gauge. So if they wipe them out, then you've minus so hard and haven't profited anything. To mitigate gauge costs in the stack, I'm uh I'm running 4 Vider Nove. This guy is really good because now you can call a lot of your costly Abigails for cheaper cost. So a lot of your 1-drop Abigails will all be free, and then your Overturn Abigail will be 1 gauge instead of 2. So it lets you use your Overturn in 1 turn easily by playing this. And it's safe to actually play it and go all out and overturn early, just because you'll be skipping your opponent's turn anyway, so having it on the field doesn't really matter. Uh Next up, we're going to size 1s. I'm running 3 Ruler Battle Zone Abigail. This card is a negating drop. If I have a pretty decent hand, I usually charge this because then he'll be a negate later whenever I need it. If you have like Elgard out on the field and he's negating the abilities of your opponent's monsters and they have to link attack, you can just remove this from your drop zone counter, put this on the bottom of your deck, pay 1 gauge, and negate the attack. So this can completely stall out your opponent based on how your field is set up. Because ideally, if you have one of these in your drop zone and a invitation set, you're probably pretty good because you'll get there with gauge and you won't pay a lot of gauge based on the cards that you play. Next up, the buddy for 1s. It's at 4. It's the buddy. It gives you life every time you call it. So a lot of times what I'll do is late game, after I've already start with Overturn, I'll call Vider Nove, and then I'll call 2 Abigails. The buddy call, I'll gain 3, and then I'll gain 2 more. And just your opponent seeing you shoot up to like 15 life can really hurt their mindset for the game. Then all you do later is like when they swing it is you're going to negate it, you're going to play Invitation, or you're going to play Darkness Healing, and you're going to go up even higher. And then it's almost impossible for them to deal 20 damage in 1 turn. Next up is the size 2 lineup. I am only running 4 Black Crest Dragons Illos. This guy is only in the deck to search Death Count Requiem. Otherwise, I do not use his ability unless I need to search out for other sets, and I can also ramp back up the gauge. So otherwise, like, this guy can just be regularly called to the center, and you don't have to use his ability. So he has a 6k defense, which is highly relevant in this meta, especially if you're dealing with stuff like specifically the bat stack, so Thunder Emperor Fangs. Because if you rest their bats, or you have bats effect negated, and you battle zone Abigail from the drop zone and negate bat's attack, the rest of their field cannot hit this alone. So they'll have to link attack unless they have their center open for the weapon to hit. So if they have to link attack, you're taking it all on one monster, and you could just play Darkness Healing and gain life. So this guy's pretty good just because his 6k defense does make a difference against a lot of decks, but not Gear Guard, not much. Last up for monsters, I'm running Overturn Black Death Dragon Abigail. And this guy is only good in a Requiem deck. What sucks about it is that like Overturn and Overkill for a lot of other decks, like, they're good in almost any deck for that world or flag or whatever. But it's like with Darkness Dragon World specifically, our stuff is so archetype specific, like, we can't even like put this in anything else. So this guy is only relevant in Requiem. Some people are using in Death, but I don't think is a good idea because you still can't use Garrow's ability to rest and attack your opponent. Because it says you cannot attack, and with Garrow's ability, you rest your monster to stand up their monster and attack them. But this says that you cannot attack. So This card is super clutch in only Requiem. Your opponent is basically playing the game with 2 turns instead of 3. Going first and overturning, as well as casting Death Count Requiem is one of the optimum things that you should always do if you can your first turn, because it puts a huge advantage in your favor while playing. So the reason why he's in there for, he also keeps your Black Dragon stuff from being destroyed, which saves your item, it saves Abigail itself, and it saves all of your sets. Next up, doing the spell lineup. Black Ritual. If you're playing Black Dragons, any variant, you should be maxing this card. Because Destroyer now stuff we usually benefit from. One of those cards that we benefit from is Obituary. We're running at 3. When I was running at 4, I was seeing it way too much and didn't have the gauge to pay for it. After you've Black Ritual this thing about 1 or 2 times, you should have enough advantage over your opponent where they shouldn't be able to come back or get rid of Requiem. At 4, Darkness Healing. Get rid of monsters that you don't need anymore, as well as dodge penetrate. You gain 4 life if you have the item equipped. Well, the new item, you'll gain another life, so you'll gain 5 for destroying one of your cards. Next set spell, Execution Ground. We're only running in at 3 because you can only set 1 of them on the field, and we can also search it. So another card that I'm running that's not that bad is Black Crest Volcano. We're running at 2. This card is really good, especially if you can overturn first turn and set Death Count Requiem, because you will guaranteed skip your opponent's turn, which will give you that gauge and life gain to kind of mitigate some of the cost of casting Requiem. Next up, spells. Lastly for spells, Invitation to Deathground. Only a 3 because you can search it. Once you get 1, you're pretty much set. If you do 2 when you have the gauge, you can pretty much like get there as far as time goes for managing the count for Requiem. And it hard counters a lot of decks that call units back from the drop zone, such as Oni Assassins. Then lastly, for cards in the deck, we're running just 3. Black Crest Gale Emblem, because this item protects your set spells. Well, not just set spells, your set cards in general. And then every time a Black Dragon is destroyed on your field, you gain a life, and that's not once per turn. So it also penalizes your opponents for destroying your monsters. So if you have your size 0s on the field that have Soul Guard and your opponent is attacking or blowing them up, you're gaining a life each time they're destroyed. So if you have 2 on both sides, you're gaining 4 life, and they just wasted attacks on your monsters that could have been directed at you. So, that's it for my deck profile on Requiem. I personally do not like the deck because I feel like it's a gimmick deck, and it's like draw Requiem or you lose, set up Requiem and survive these turns, or you lose in a meta that's like really fast paced. Does the deck win? Yes, the deck does win, and it can be really unfair against new players. So personally, I don't play it at locals anymore. It kind of just sits in my bag, so I only play it like for fun throughout the week. Is it competitive? Yes, it's competitive, but it's a one-trick pony. So that's it for the deck profile. Please like and subscribe, and we'll try to do more deck profiles as you guys ask for them. Peace.